Welcome to the Alcohol Free Life podcast, brought to you by thesoberclub.com. I'm Janey Grace. This is for you if you've quit the booze or you'd like to, or maybe you're just sober curious. I'll bring you tips and motivation without any judgment, and there'll be inspiration from experts, quit-lit authors, and sober heroes. Hi, and welcome to the podcast. I hope you had a wonderful Christmas and a wonderful New Year. I spoke to you between Christmas and New Year, but I really hope your New Year was fabulous. And of course, if you are quitting the booze, then welcome to the world of sobriety. And don't forget, focus only on what you're gaining, because there's nothing to lose, right? I hope lots of you downloaded our ebook, 25 for 2025, 25 sobriety tips, I should say, for 2025. So we got to number one on the Amazon chart, on the health and recovery, and on the self-help, I think it was. So it was fantastic. So it was myself and a whole bunch of Sober Club coaches that I trained, put together a whole bunch of tips. So if you haven't downloaded it yet, on Kindle now, there's a little price on it. It's about $1 or just under $1 or something. Or otherwise, if you just want the PDF version and you want to download that for free, then if you go to thesoberclub.com, you'll see there's a blog there, or you'll see the link at the top, and you can still download that book for free. It's just a bunch of tips, but bunch of insights. If you are new to ditching the booze, then it's absolutely perfect for you. If you've been sober for ages, it's still lovely to have some reminders of the things that worked well for other people. You know, we all want to feel connected, and keeping that kind of sober toolkit in place, if you like, that self-care toolkits, it's absolutely so important. So please go to thesoberclub.com and download that. Before I get into the main stuff I want to share with you this week, just a reminder that next Friday the 10th, I'm going to be at the Lights in Andover. So this is a gig. It's linked to my book that came out, From Wham to Woo, A Life on the Mic. Going to be talking all about that book. And we're going to be reliving the 80s and 90s. It's going to be really good fun. There's a live band going to be playing some 80s tracks. And it's just going to be really, really fun. It would just be great to have some podcast listeners and Sober Club members there. I think it's only about 20 quid, something like that. So if you can make it to the Lights in Andover, I know it's probably a long way, but maybe make a weekend of it. It'd be fabulous to meet you. Then I look forward to seeing you there. If you go to thesoberclub.com, click on events, you'll see the link that goes through to the Lights. And then if you're in Scotland, I'm finally coming to Edinburgh. I love Edinburgh. Going to be there for an event at Blackwells bookshop on the 29th of January. So again, the link is under events in the Sober Club. I really look forward to meeting you. We'll do a meetup as well for people who listen to the podcast or the Sober Club before the bookshop event. So just make sure you connect with me, but book your tickets for Blackwells and then let me know if you're coming, and we'll arrange something beforehand. So what else is there to tell you? Oh yes, and a retreat, a very special retreat, Souful Sobriety. It's going to be a luxury holistic retreat that I'm co-facilitating in a gorgeous luxury farmhouse in Essex, so you can actually feel properly pampered, but there'll be all the kind of spiritual stuff you want, but it's open to everyone. There's nothing, you can have to do anything you don't want to, but there'll be everything there for your self-care. It doesn't matter if you're sober curious or you've been sober for years. It's going to be a wonderful weekend. It's the 7th to the 9th of March. So again, if you go to thesoberclub.com, click on events, we'll have the link there very soon. If the link is not there, but you know that you're interested, please drop me a message and I'll make sure that you get on the list for as soon as we open up the bookings, because obviously spaces are very, very limited. It's going to be fabulous. It's going to include a cacao ceremony. There'll be some crystal healing. There'll be a sound bath. There'll be lots of teaching, and it's going to be fabulous. So I really hope some of you can make that 7th to the 9th of March. Pop that in your diary. Family constellations as well, probably Sunday 21st of February, but got to get that confirmed. But there's lots of stuff coming up. So I love connecting with you guys. It's just great to meet listeners and Sober Club members. Really, really makes a massive difference. And the next thing to say is thank you to everyone who came to our workshop, our online workshop, Setting Your Intentions for 25. It was such a good opportunity to really dive deep into what we want to let go of for 24 and focus on for 25. And our special guest was Sandy Newbigging. I love his stuff. He did the most awesome meditation for us. It was just fantastic. So, I mean, I think there's probably still a chance to register for that, even though it's already happened, but then you get the recording. I think that's how it works. So, anyways, have a look at soberclub.com, click on events if that's still of interest to you. But I thought that I would play a little section of just the generic stuff that Sandy was talking about around setting your intentions. I thought everyone will really benefit from that, even if you didn't want to come to the workshop. That was such a great bit of inspiration that Sandy gave us. So I'm going to bring you that in this podcast. Really hope you enjoy listening to Sandy. Just before we do that, I did want to mention that piece I saw in the press this week. I thought it was really interesting. It was a really clickbaity headline. You see these all the time. I had them done to me, when I've done interviews with journalists, and then the headline is nothing like what you said. It's like, what the hell even is that? And I realize, of course, I know the game. I'm, worked in the media for years, although I never was on that kind of print media where you have to get that clickbait. I mean, I hate it. But it used to drive me mad that, I would have a conversation with a journalist. I would know exactly what I said. And then the headline would say something that I did not say. When you got into the piece, it became clear that I hadn't said that. So you couldn't really argue with them. But someone, presumably someone different to the actual journalist that did the piece, had had taken a different headline completely out of context in order to get hits, I suppose. I mean, what's the point? But anyway, on that note, I saw this piece, I think it was in the Mail, and the headline was something like dry January is just a fad and a complete waste of time and can do more harm than good. That kind of thing. Don't quote me, it wasn't word for word, but it was that kind of vibe. It can do more harm than good. And of course, I'm thinking, who's written this? Who's, come up with that kind of statement? And then, of course, when you actually read the piece, it wasn't that at all. It was there were some quotes from a guy who I think worked in a rehab center, and a couple of other pieces. And the basic premise of the piece was, dry January can be great to kickstart sobriety, but don't just count those days, for 30 days, gritting your teeth, white knuckling it the whole time until you can drink again, and then go crazy, literally crazy on the 1st of Feb, because that's not going to do your system very good. That was kind of what they were saying, which I would agree with. Of course, it's crazy if you're not going to focus on everything you're gaining. But I just thought it was really interesting that the press felt they needed to put that clickbaity headline on it, because old me, 8 years ago, would have looked at that headline and thought, there you go. You see, does more harm than good. I won't bother stopping. Whereas, of course, we know that stopping, quitting alcohol, particularly if you focus on everything you're gaining, can only ever be good. Of course, it's a good thing to allow yourself to start to heal. Just of course, I would say carry on. It needs to be, way into, set yourself a challenge of 3 months. You're going to feel an awful lot better if you do. But ultimately, I think we're singing from the same hymn sheet. And certainly for me, quitting for January, that was my initial intention. I was just going to quit for January. And thank goodness I was able to catch sight of that better life without alcohol and carry on. Which brings me to my next fabulous point, which is that I am now officially 7 years sober. And man, how amazing does it feel? So I turned 7 years on the 30th of December. And it's just such a thing. It just gets better every single year. And it's so inspirational, so exciting, just that feeling of, oh my God, 7 years and every year it gets better. So thank you to those of you who sent me lovely messages. I did write a Substack and a blog post on this, of course I did. And I'll just run through a few of the headings. I had seven surprising lessons, I called it, from a life reclaimed from my 7 years of sobriety. So I'll just whiz through a few of them here, and then you can read the blog post if you're interested. But I start off by saying in this piece, when I decided to stop drinking, or rather when I realized it was time, I don't know that I decided that I would stop forever. I think I felt uh, I didn't have choice, and I've got to stop, really, at least for a bit. And my sense was that sobriety would be a punishment. It would be a sentence, that I'd have to endure. I could never have imagined that it would be the greatest gift I could ever give to myself. Seriously, sobriety didn't just save my life, it gave me that life that was absolutely worth living. So, um, some of the most surprising benefits then, or some of the things that I wanted to share with you. The surprises, number one, things that I had not expected when I first got sober. So obviously I knew that I would be avoiding hangovers. I knew that I wouldn't have hangovers. Well, yeah, great. But it was so much more than that. It transformed my whole life. Started with physical health. I started to wake up, with more energy. I got sober hair, who knew? Shiny hair. My eyesight got better, seriously. Still not 100%, but definitely got better. I started to just feel different. My skin looked better. And then, from the emotional perspective, for years I've been chasing happiness at the bottom of that bottle. I really had. But I started to realize, I'd just been numbing myself to the good stuff, if you like. And I finally found that I could also feel content. That word contentment, it was something that I thought only other people had, because they were naturally happy, in inverted commas, naturally happy people. But it turns out I could be too. That could be mine too if I removed the toxic poison. If I took that out of the equation. And then even more surprising was how sobriety reignited passions for me, things that I'd forgotten about. The world literally felt bigger, brighter, full of possibilities. There were relationship differences too. I used to think that it was the drinking that made relationships good, that made me more fun and feel more connected. But it's not true. It kept me isolated, and sobriety gave me the ability to really show up fully, for the people in my life that I care about. Um, and then in terms of actually starting to like myself, you've heard me talk about this on the podcast loads of times, but it was a surreal moment for me. I think it was a good long time, probably about a year into sobriety. I looked in the mirror and for the first time in years, I actually felt kind of proud of the person looking back at me rather than the hatred that I would have instilled on her before. So that was a victory I never really saw coming. So that leads me to number two in my reflections of a life reclaimed, and that is learning to like yourself, because it really is. It's a really difficult part of this sobriety journey. It doesn't flow effortlessly, but it's definitely one of the most rewarding parts. And I think when you strip away the substance, you are left with yourself. You're raw, you're unfiltered. Can be a bit scary. Often all you can see is, a whole bunch of your own flaws. I felt incredible shame for a few months. I found it really hard to kind of forgive myself. I hated that. Huge amount of guilt. Very unsure about who I was to start with. But over time, really incredible stuff started to happen. I started to forgive myself. I started to realize, I don't have to be defined by my worst moments. And over time, I was able to start to treat myself with the same kind of kindness that I would treat other people. And there were lots of things that helped that process: the journaling, the mindfulness, some therapeutic stuff. I'm now trained as a coach and a therapist, and I really believe there are ways of getting to this place a much quicker way than I had to. But for sure, we can all start to focus on those wins. There's a lot more I could say on that one, but have a read of the blog. And then number three was building resilience, because, as I've already said, life doesn't get magically easier when you ditch the booze. You do still have challenges, of course you do. But what sobriety does give you is that sense of resilience, so you can face some of the challenges. I mean, let's face, what's the option if you're not going to face a challenge? All you can do is numb out or walk away. But when when you're sober, it allows you to be present. In the past, I just used to use alcohol to avoid any kind of discomfort, really. If I'd had a really stressful day, I mean, just reach for a drink. If I had an argument with, someone in my family, reach for a drink. If I was feeling really sad, really anxious, reach for a drink. Um, so you have to learn to sit with feelings. You have to feel all the feels. And it becomes very powerful when you realize that you can be more resilient than you at first might give yourself credit for. And that's not to say you won't have moments that are testing. My mum got seriously ill. She was seriously ill for a really long time. She died a couple of years ago. Obviously, Steve Wright, my boss and friend for 24 years, died last February. Um, I've had to, reinvent myself in inverted commas. My career as a radio presenter came to an end. It was really tough. There was lots of stuff in my family. Actually, I must mention Johnny Walker, who just passed away um, on New Year's Eve. I mean, again, such a big part of my life, Johnny. Really, really amazing. Um, and in the past, I just sort of numbed out from those experiences. But sobriety teaches you to lean in and trust. And in so doing, um, you come through stronger. You really do. Number four is setting boundaries and finding freedom. And you've heard me say this on the podcast, but I used to be a proper people pleaser, like seriously, yes, say yes to everything, often making myself miserable along the way. But sobriety made me look at that so that I was able to have the courage to set boundaries, um, to actually say no when I needed to. You've heard me say no is a complete sentence, and I know that now. And at first, it did feel selfish. I thought, oh God, if I say no to that person, they'll hate me. Well, so what? We have to protect ourselves. We have to protect our boundaries. I still don't like it when people don't like me, but I can get over it. The title of the memoir is From Wham to Woo, A Life on the Mic, and the wham bit obviously is my days as a backing singer and the radio stuff. But the woo, well, the woo is it's not what I thought it meant. It's a double meaning. Of course, it stands for all the spiritual stuff, but it also stands for winning others over, according to one of those personality testing thingies, winning others over. And that's what I love doing. I love trying to win others over. I love trying to encourage everyone to think how I do and to feel passionate about sobriety. But of course, it doesn't always work. But sobriety helps you to set some boundaries and have that new sense of freedom in who you are. And then community and connection is number five. And that really has been one of the most beautiful gifts of sobriety, the sense of community that it's brought into my life. I did think I'd have to do it alone at first. I didn't know if I would share it with anyone, in a professional capacity on the radio or anything. In the end, I absolutely did because I felt so excited and passionate about it. And then I did my TEDx talk, Sobriety Rocks Who Knew. And it was when I did that TEDx talk that I met people in the audience who felt the same way, and I realized, there's a whole bunch of people here. So that's why I formed the Sober Club. A whole bunch of people who would never dream of going to an AA meeting or going to rehab or going to a GP, but they are interested in well-being and they are interested in getting free from the alcohol trap. So sobriety showed me that power of vulnerability and being able to, open up and let others in. And I love the community. I love the community that I've created. Yeah, I am going to blow my own trumpet. I love hosting the Sober Club, and I love the fact that everyone supports each other and they're cheerleaders for each other. Some people are day one, and some people have been sober for 10 years. And who cares? We all want to flourish and grow, really. So I think the community really has been amazing. It's a huge part of it, connection and community, I think. And then rediscovering joy in everyday stuff is number six. Again, it's something I talk about a lot. Sobriety brings us really big changes in our lives usually, but above all, I think it helps us find joy in everyday stuff, particularly, those of us who, like me, were just always looking for the next thrill, really. Um, I used to overlook little things, the feel of the sunshine on your skin and standing next to a tree and having a fabulous cup of coffee and my favorite song coming on the radio. It was no big deal, but now it's a big deal. These little things feel magical. Because without alcohol dumbing everything down and dulling your senses, you really can appreciate little things, appreciate, the simple pleasures. And it's those little things that become the foundation of contentment, right? We don't always need to be ricocheting off the side of a mountain or whatever. It can be little things that can help us feel fulfilled. And then number 7, then, I mean, obviously I could go on forever, but I've just covered 7 points in my blog. And that was the discovery of growth and purpose. And I think that sobriety can so often give us clarity so that we can ask those bigger questions of ourselves, those questions, like, who am I? What do I want from my life? And I think for years, alcohol was a distraction and it kept me from really exploring my own true potential. I think that's the case for so many people. I've had so many clients who've said to me, "Oh, I can't believe it. Since I've quit alcohol, I've done X and Y. I've found my purpose. I've discovered, who I am." So it doesn't just change what you do, it changes how you see yourself and how you see your place in the world. And that's just, it's an absolute amazing gift. And for me, when my radio show came to an end, when I was no longer working at Radio 2, it had been part of my life for 24 years, for God's sake. And when I was no longer doing that, it was the end of an era. But I had other stuff going on. And, obviously, thankfully, this podcast and my UK Health radio show have kept me, on the mic, as it were. And of course, I'm now in the 3rd year, I think it is, of training people to be sober coaches. And that's just incredible. I get just so much from seeing the transformation in people, because they have so much personal growth and they're going into doing something so incredibly rewarding. It's really powerful. It's all about, supporting each other. So to conclude then, I suppose, if you're early days, then I can't deny the early weeks and the early months can be a bit tough, because it is like an emotional roller coaster. All those lovely things I've just shared, they don't come in the first couple of weeks, sadly. But you have to hang on in there. At first, you might be a bit unsure who you are, where you fit, but you've got to take some time to fit into your own sober shoes. But then when you do, when they get comfortable and sparkly, that's when you kind of find that new identity for yourself. So, the one day at a time thing, it is true. You do have to do this one day at a time, but celebrate the small victories along the way. Focus only on what you're gaining. And remember, it's okay to ask for help. There's a whole world waiting for you on the other side that has, the clarity there, the connection. Really, I just wish someone had told me sooner just how freaking fantastic life is without the booze. If only I'd known that sooner, I wouldn't have waited so long. So I'm filled with gratitude. I really am, for every one of those years. Gosh, I couldn't imagine my life without alcohol 8 and a bit years ago. I could not imagine it. Today, I can't imagine a life where alcohol has any place at all, ever. Really, it is just amazing. So if you're on this journey, know that I'm absolutely rooting for you. I really am. And, focus on what you're gaining, get connected, celebrate the wins, and set your intentions. This is a fantastic time to set those intentions, and there's no better intention than, deciding that you want to be happy, healthy, and sober. There's a good title for a book. Sandy, welcome.
Hello.
Hey, how are you?
Very well, thank you.
Great. Oh, aren't you somewhere fabulous? Where are you again?
I live in Mexico.
Oh,
I'm from
fantastic.
Scotland, But
Yeah. We guessed that. Oh, you're so lucky. How amazing. Thank you so much for joining us, Sandy. There's going to be lots of people here who don't know much about you. So let's just chat a little bit about your work. Tell us a bit about your fascinating background. I haven't seen you for ages.
it's so nice to see you again. It's been far too long. My potted history or bio is I'm a therapeutic coach, meditation teacher, author, 12 books,
Is it
some of
12?
which with Hay House.
Wow.
Yeah,
Amazing.
writing the 13th. Um, Podcaster, I guess you could say. And I've been training people in my own methods, mind detox and comology, since 2008.
Wow.
And so I have an academy teaching people my methods.
So tell us a bit about how you got into it all in the first place, because you had a interesting journey yourself.
Well, I was always interested in self-help, personal development, that sort of stuff from a very young age. I was bullied a lot at school. Um, and it like I couldn't really read very well. I know I've written these books now, but I was petrified of reading out loud in English class and scared
Yeah.
of going to school for the bullies and the English class reading out loud and stuff. And the first book I picked up and read cover to cover was Awareness by Anthony DeMello. So that kind of started me off. Another book, first book was A Way of the Peaceful Warrior, which many of you might know, or The Way of the Peaceful Warrior. And so these were kind of a couple self-help books that kind of got me going on the journey and had that curiosity. Started off as a life coach in my mid-20s, to the horror of people around me and my boss at the time. He said, "What?" I said, when I said I was going to be a life coach, he said, "What? When you're older?" I was like, "No."
But you haven't
Um,
lived, Sandy.
and then quickly saw that it wasn't only about knowing what you want. And, coaching is very much about, I'm here, I want to get there, and I'm going to find my way from here to there. But it really became obvious to me that we need some therapy as well. And that's where I really became more of a therapist than a coach per se. Um, the way I kind of define it is coaching is for answering the question, how can I?
Mm,
Therapy is for answering the question, why am I? Why am I sick? Why am I anxious? Why can't I sleep? Why am I
yeah,
a perfectionist or whatever it might be? And spirituality is more about answering the question, who am I? Who
yeah,
am I?
yeah.
And it becomes really clear like that, how can I? Why am I? Who am I? It really helped me in my own journey to get clearer on what tool I need at any one given time,
Yeah.
moment in time. Through that journey of meditation, I became a monk for 12 years.
Wow.
For
Tell us what
12,
you mean by that, because
14
you
years.
can't just let that sentence slide. What
Well, I
kind of
had a
monk?
spiritual teacher. I took vows. I was living in a community up a mountain in Spain until it became a little bit culty and I had to get out of it. So that's a whole story in and of itself.
Oh, I think we lost Sandy for a moment. Can you still hear me? You back with us, Sandy?
I am back.
Oh,
Yes.
you are
Sorry, I
back.
couldn't
Good.
hear.
Okay. I don't know if that was your end or mine, but carry on. Yeah. So it became a bit
Clearly,
culty.
someone out there didn't want me talking about the cult.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly.
but
Yeah.
yeah, it turned a little bit culty or quite a lot culty actually, and I had to get out. And I got out in 2021. And since then, I really have been in quite an intense healing journey of how I ended up in that and really sifting for the gold. And now I do my best to to share and be an advocate for healthy and empowering ways to engage self-help, self-healing, personal development, spirituality, meditation. These things, they can be double-edged swords. They
Mm,
can be helpful, but they can also have a bit of a dark side sometimes too.
mm, mm. I
So
think
I'm really passionate these days about sharing this stuff, like I said, in the most healthy and empowering way.
I mean, I think one of the things that I love about your work when I first became aware of the stuff that you do is you make, well, meditation, for example, just take meditation, you make it very accessible for everyone. Um, you know, we'll just explain a little bit about that, because I think that's one of the your real gifts is being able to allow everyone to feel they can access this stuff.
Well, ultimately, meditation is about being yourself, and therefore it has to be simple. It can't really be 5 or 10 steps to get back to yourself. Ultimately, Papaji, one of the older, ancient spirit teachers, or not so ancient, but from the past, he talked about how there's no space between you and you.
Yeah.
And so the less doing we're doing when we're meditating, the better. But it's not always as simple as that, because we can pick up a lot of ideas and misconceptions about meditation. So when we end up sitting down, we've got a really long checklist of stuff I should be doing right now. I should be present.
Absolutely. Shopping
I should be
lists.
present. I should feel peaceful. I shouldn't have any thoughts. I should be non-attached. I should be non-resistant. I should,
Mm.
I should. The list goes on and on. And there's a lot of doing in that. And what I saw was that a lot of meditation and spirituality is kind of feeding the parts of our ego and strengthening the ego. When we're actually think we're on a quest to be more free of the ego, we're actually just using spirituality as a new way of kind of strengthening it. And a lot of self-help and spirituality, I believe, kind of feeds our own kind of belief that we're not worthy.
Oops, lost him again. The pleasures of Zoom. Anyone here found that they, since quitting alcohol, they find they're much more able to focus on meditation?
No, but I want to try it. It's funny, it's one of the subjects because I think it's Danny Carr, on her How I Quit Alcohol podcast. She
Okay.
talks about
That.
meditation quite a lot as well.
Interesting.
And
Am I back again?
Oh, you're back. You're back, Sandy. Yeah, thank you.
If it happens again, I
Carry
might
on.
just disappear and change over to a different internet.
Okay.
So bear with
All
me.
right. Yeah.
We'll keep going.
I've forgotten where we were, but yeah, and about
I was just saying
meditation,
how there's
being
so much
present.
doing
Yeah.
in meditation. I was
Yeah.
just saying how there's so much doing in meditation. It's often strengthening the ego, and it actually appeals to the part of us that believes we're not worthy of peace yet, and I have to do something for it.
Yes,
But really,
absolutely.
it's about simplifying down, coming back to ourselves, really resting back into our beingness, coming back to the present moment, and learning to have a healthier relationship with our mind.
Yeah.
Learning to pick the mind up, use it, and put it back down.
Yeah, I love that. So, Sandy, give us your thoughts on setting intentions. That's what we're trying to focus on, is this idea of what it is that we want for the coming year. Tell us what you think of when you think about intentions.
Well, I wrote about this back in my very first book called New Beginnings back in 2005. And I'm passionate about the subject. Um, I don't know what you shared before I came on, so I'm sorry if I'm repeating you or
No,
contradicting
go
anything.
ahead. I'm sure you'll have absolute gems of wisdom.
The first one is really, really simple, and it's to focus on the what and the why.
Yeah.
It's super simple, but we need to be willing to be childlike with our imagination. And believe it or not, the first step is to actually allow ourselves to dream again.
Yeah.
Allow ourselves to get super clear on the what, super clear on the why we want it. Because what I've observed is that as adults, we can grow up and we can get quite stuck on the how.
Yes.
In fact, we can jump ahead far too quickly into the how. And because we don't necessarily know how it's possible, or we're drawing on our past experiences when talking about the how in our minds, we can very quickly talk ourselves out of even the first step, which is to let ourselves dream again.
Yeah.
And so instead, what we really want is we want to have an intention, but let ourselves become excited by it. Let ourselves, in a way, enjoy our future now. Don't not wait to have the positive feelings once the thing is manifested, but actually allow ourselves to feel that now. So I'm an advocate for not just visualizing what we want, but feelingizing what we want.
Yeah, that's a great word. Yeah.
I
It's
had
that
to
kind of acting as if, isn't it? Trying to actually visualize as if it's already happening to you.
That definitely it does help as well. Like having it in more present tense, and you know, considering what's the very last thing that has to happen for me to know that I've got this, that it's actually happened. You know, um, my friend was saying recently how, you know, her daughter really wanted a dog because they'd lost their previous one, and she kept saying, "I want a dog for Christmas. I want a dog for Christmas." Well, she got a dog for Christmas because her friend needed a dog sitter for 3 days over Christmas. So you know you got to be kind of precise and be careful what you wish for because you can get it.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
that's why I say, what's the very last thing that has to happen for you to know you've got this? And so you actually go a bit further down the road than you would normally. And for this little girl, she'd want to be thinking about more like 6 months or a year down the line when the dog is integrated into the house and it's hanging out at the first Christmas, the
Yeah,
next
yeah.
Christmas or something. And so you want to be, you know, but in that dreaming state, in that imagination state, allow yourself to genuinely feel it now because we want to associate uplifting and positive energy and emotions with what we want. And although this might seem obvious, if we're honest with ourselves, when we think about what we want, it doesn't always have a good feeling associated with it. It can come with a bit of a, oh, but it's not happened, or maybe it's not possible, or you know, it happens for others, but not me. Or there can be other things, you know, thoughts that we have and beliefs that we have that feel these kind of almost heavy feelings when we think about what we want, because
Mm.
I don't have it yet, and we can associate it with frustration or discontentment or things
Yeah.
like that. And the universe is listening at an energetic level, and so therefore we get our most emotionally infused intent. Okay. Which takes me to my next point when it comes to focusing on what you want and why you want it. I really urge everyone to, when you are clear, like what you've just done with Janey, to get clear on an intention, be super honest with yourself about why you want it.
Mm.
So you kind of go, what do I want? Why do I want it? And then ask again, but why do I want it really?
Yeah, exactly. Well,
And the
particularly if
really
we've
is
been,
really
we've been talking
important.
about people here who are kind of people pleasers, so many of us are, and often we can have a goal that actually, when we really dig deep, we didn't really want it. We just wanted it because someone else thought we wanted it.
That's exactly a perfect example. Another example happened to me a number of years ago when I'd been single for a couple of years. I've been working out, I've been trying to make myself successful and attractive to a partner or whatever, you know. But I had this blog, and my friend sat with me one lunch and said, "But why do you really want this?" And I said, honestly, so I'm not lonely anymore. And so I actually had more energy associated with not being lonely and the loneliness than
Mm.
actually any idea of skipping through fields with the love of my life, having this beautiful day or whatever. You know what I'm saying? I promise you, this is a true story. I left that conversation having got realized that hidden intent, which was a negative one, and I walked down the street, went to a meeting, and I met a partner, Amanda, who I ended up being with for the next 3 years. We had TV shows together, we wrote books together, we traveled the world together. It was an amazing relationship. Um, and so I saw in my own experience that day how quickly the universe can respond when you're super clear on the intent.
Yeah.
Super clear, which is another little element of intention setting is don't be attached to when it's going to happen because it can
Mm.
happen quicker than we believe possible. And often when we're planning the when, again, our limitations and our limiting beliefs can kick in and push the can down the road. And so when you have the intention, you're just open to it manifesting at any time
Mm.
at all. You know, it could
Yeah,
be quicker and sooner than you might expect.
I love that. Fantastic. Anything else you want to share about setting intentions before you? I know you're going to lead us in a meditation, which I'm really looking forward to.
Well, I've got a couple of big things to talk about actually, if you've got time.
Yeah, absolutely.
The second would be, and it might sound a bit flowery, a little bit, you know, tree huggy,
No,
but
no, don't
forgive
worry.
me.
We do plenty of woo here.
All right, cool. I would say you want to aim to have a miracle mindset, and it really leads on to what I'm talking about right now. Um, we don't we don't need. I would actually encourage you to expect not to know how it's going to happen.
Yeah, just
Expect not to know.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I love that.
So
Because
leading
we
on
don't
from
always
the,
have to know all the whole process, do we?
I've come to conclude that it's really not our job to figure out the how. It's more to what and why, and then we work with life and the world and universe and et cetera, in order for the how to actually to show up. But it's this idea of having more of a miracle mindset. I did a podcast episode on this, podcast 36, if you're interested, of my Mind Detox podcast.
Mm.
I did this last year, and I actually researched the definitions of miracles when talking about this. And I've got them here if I can read them to you, because it's really
Yeah, please do.
important to
Oh, someone
know.
says they've got miracles in their word of the year.
Oh, awesome.
Nice.
Perfect.
Yeah. Carry
So
on.
there's
Yeah.
a couple of definitions for miracle. One is a surprising and welcome event that is not explicable by nature or scientific laws, and is therefore considered to be the work of a divine agency. That's pretty
Wow.
cool.
That is very cool.
And the second
Love that.
definition is a highly improbable or extraordinary event, development, or accomplishment that brings very welcome consequences. So these are
Nice.
like the two definitions. And what jumped out at me were two things from the definition of a miracle. Number one is the word improbable. Improbable. I even just like saying that word, improbable.
Mm.
It kind of falls in my mouth. Improbable. And, logic, and when we get into our mind and we're trying to overthink things too much, then we can get caught up in our mental conditioning. Like I said, these limiting beliefs that we all have, a few of them here and there lurking in the nooks and crannies of our mind. And our mind can start telling us that it's probably unlikely or not possible for us.
Yeah.
From where we are right now and where we want to get to or what we would like to achieve, we just can't see how it's going to happen.
Yeah.
So we have to be open to this kind of improbable, but also the word surprising was in the definition as well. And I love that. We need to be open to what we want arising from surprising sources. Okay. Because
Yeah, I love
miracles
that.
are both improbable and usually come from surprising sources. If it wasn't that, then it probably wouldn't be a miracle. It'd just be a plan, a goal.
Yeah.
You get A, B, C, you'd work through A, B, and C, and you get there. But in the territory of miracles, we're having to let go of the how and just live fully open, having, set that intent, fully open to how that might come, and be open to arising from an improbable and surprising source.
Yeah.
Okay.
Love that.
And the way I do this is it links very much with purpose. People often come to me and ask about, how do you know your purpose, my purpose in life? And there's kind of two purposes I talk about. There's the purpose of our overall life. Why was I born? What am I here to do with this life?
Yeah.
And I suggest that we kind of got two purposes. You got to assume that whatever's happening right now is your purpose. You're never off purpose. You're never being distracted or detoured, or nothing's really an interruption or distraction. That if you're having to do the dishes in half an hour's time or whatever, that's your purpose right now. And you dedicate yourself to that purpose. If someone then comes and talks to you when you're in the middle of something, again, they're your purpose now. Okay? So your purpose is both an immediate purpose. And this really helps us stop resisting life, getting frustrated, feeling frustrated by people around us or interrupted or whatever. And we're just more willing to welcome our present moment, which is a big spiritual teaching, right?
Yeah.
I wrote a whole book on no longer fighting life.
Yeah.
Cam here, the little one behind me. So that's one element. And we got the larger purpose that we can't often know in advance, but if we're willing to follow our nose, follow the breadcrumbs, we often look back and go, oh, that was my purpose. See, a lot of people are trying to do purpose back to front, I believe. They're trying to put a finger in the air and go, what's my purpose? And all they can really rely on is their mind and their mental conditioning for that, and what their mind thinks will probably make them happy at some point. But I believe life has our perfect happiness formula. It knows exactly what would make you the happiest, most fulfilled person. And if we're able to let go and surrender long enough and go with life, then our overall purpose is inevitable. So how does this work in practicalities? Well, this is one of the best tips I can give you guys today if you want to hear it. How do we create a purpose? How do we create these miracles? Well, they show up in two different ways, in my opinion. The first one is through inner inspiration. Okay? Inner inspiration. So that's where inspiration, not just any thought. It's a special type of thought because it has emotion come with the thought. There's like inspiration has emotion built into the thought and that emotion and that energy is built into the thought because the thought is the unmanifest and you need the energy to move it into the manifest. Okay? So when you have that inspiration, I urge you to act upon it, even if you don't, again, just don't overthink it. Just act upon that inspiration. About 9 years ago, I woke up one morning and thought, I think I'm going to have a membership site. I'd been traveling the world. I was living out of a suitcase, but I would go in there, have a week retreat with someone or a weekend event or whatever, and then leave. And then I wanted to have some kind of support, like ongoing, so we could apply these big concepts about meditation, spirituality, etc. And so I used that inspiration, energy, and then 9 years later, it's still running, and we still got the Calm Clan. So that's an idea. You have an inspired internal inspiration. Okay. The second way we create a purpose through these miracles is through external invitation. Okay, external invitation. Okay. Now that can be through a billboard. It can be through a friend saying, "Hey, have you checked out this person?" It could be an advertisement sometimes. It could be a conversation. Some kind of external invitation, essentially. And these are the simplest ways to really look at how do I manifest? Well, I manifest through internal inspiration and external invitation. Very, very simple, but it takes a lot of the overthinking out of it.
Yeah.
And you're actually able to be present as you go about your day.
And there's no doubt about it. When we have that kind of sense of authenticity and intent, that's when the external invitations come to us. When you're ready, the teacher appears or the opportunity appears, right?
Exactly. I love how you use the word authenticity. It's such a big word. But essentially it boils down to being yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. God universe works in mysterious ways, Patricia says. Yeah, absolutely. The word miracles is in my assortment for this year. Yeah. Anyone else want to chip in anything around meditation? Oh, you're back. Good. Okay.
Sorry about this. It wasn't
right.
happening before. I've been on the internet all morning. So what happened?
One of those things. Carry on.
But I was talking about authenticity. But anyway, we can go into that if you want. But and the third thing I wanted to share with everyone today, when you asked me to talk about intention, was to be willing to meet the universe halfway. Okay. It's to be willing to meet the universe halfway. So focus on what you want and why. Have this miracles mindset, but also be willing to meet the universe halfway. It might not sound very popular when we're trying to be all positive and inspirational and stuff this new year, but there's usually a price to pay in some form.
Yeah.
That price can be, there's usually things to heal within ourselves. There's usually things to learn. And there's usually things to do. And we need to be willing to play our part. I know it might sound like such an obvious thing to say, but although, sometimes manifestation sounds like you just need to do your affirmations and do some meditations or visualizations and sit on your couch and
then
your
it all
ideal
lands
life
in your
will come
lap.
knocking.
Yeah.
The reality is it doesn't often work that way.
Yeah.
And there can be past beliefs that we need to get rid of, thinking patterns, unhelpful chronic emotional stuff. We need to resolve past traumas. We may even need to resolve this thing I talk about a lot called toxic shame.
Yeah.
It's a big cause of self-sabotage and the reasons why we don't necessarily get these intents.
Yeah.
Really big thing.
Yeah, absolutely. It's amazing stuff, Sandy. Just before we go into the meditation, just remind everybody where we can find your work.
Well, you can go to my website, minddetox.com. Is the easiest one. It's also my name, sandynewbigging.com, but it's hard to spell that sometimes.
Yeah.
So I just
Cool. Thank you, Sandy. I really appreciate Sandy joining us for our online workshop. Obviously, we went on to do to chat some more and to do a meditation, which if you had signed up for the workshop, then you'll still get that recording and also the recording of the whole session, and also the full audio recording of Sandy's meditation as well. So you can probably still sign up. I think the link is still there. If you go to thesoberclub.com, click on events, you'll find everything there. And don't forget the lights, Andover. If you can get to that part of the world, it'd be so great to see you, even if you weren't around in the 80s and 90s. We'll have a fun evening, I'm sure. And then Blackwells, Edinburgh, 29th of January. Make sure you're reaching out if you're doing this. It can be hard. I said that at the beginning, but reach out. There's someone to support you. I will hold the vision for you. Of course, I'd love you to join us in the Sober Club, but if that's not for you, just reach out anyway. And don't forget to download the free ebook. If you go to thesoberclub.com, you can click on the blog post there or the link at the top and get the PDF version, or you can go to Kindle if you want to get it from Kindle as an ebook, and then it's, I don't know, $1 or something like that. So very happy New Year to you once again. Set those intentions, focus on what it is you want. I did recommend that everyone in our workshop comes up with a word of the year. So one word that can kind of align with what you want for the coming year. It's a really nice exercise. You can come up with that word, and then maybe you can pin it on the wall or write yourself a poem and drop me a message. Let me know what your word is, and I will hold you accountable to it. I will see you next time. Thank you for listening to the Alcohol Free Life podcast, brought to you by the Sober Club. Please rate and review. And if you want support, accountability and inspiration, and you want to live your best life without the booze, check out thesoberclub.com.